Well, India's growth strategy has been right. India's growth strategy has been based on domestic market-driven growth. Most of all, India has emerged as a credible country, whether it's in intellectual property, whether it's in the application and implementation of our laws. India has built up a credibility, and there is that sense of confidence. We have to ensure that this confidence is sustained. That is really the story of India's growth, and I see India continuing on its growth trajectory.
How is urban infrastructure sustaining India's economic growth story?
In India, growth has preceded infrastructure, and most of all, growth has preceded urban infrastructure. So the urban infrastructure deficit is so profound and so huge that the investment in urban infrastructure will run into trillions of dollars. And with today about 55% of our GDP in urban centers, and in the next decade 70% of GDP being generated in our urban centers, the challenge is enormous. So the next big thing waiting to happen in India is urban infrastructure.
And how is the government planning to increase connectivity by rail and road between the big cities?
Well, by larger rail connectivity, by larger road connectivity. And road connectivity has to be looked at integrated, because you cannot have a metro or a highway just ending there. That has got to have a connection into the city, into the urban centers. Similarly, if you're going to have a metro just end at a dead end without connecting any connection with roads, it's not going to serve the purpose.
How has the Delhi metro changed the lives of ordinary people?
Well, people who were not mobile before, people who couldn't go to work, they could get a job, but they couldn't go to work because it would take them 2.5 or 3 hours, and then would cost them so much money. Now, because of the mobility, businesses are able to get people, people are able to get jobs. The economic activity has had a huge impact. So the metro just doesn't provide urban transportation. It generates a huge amount of economic activity.
Have events like the tsunami and earthquake in Japan or other events that we're seeing in the Middle East been, in your view, damaging to India's economic growth, or might there be repercussions?
Of course, Japan being such a huge economy, with its economy being hit, one's really waiting to see what happens. The impact it will have in its trade with India. It's just not India's exports, it's India's imports. With so much of Japanese industry now in stress, there is going to be a problem. The Middle East, where oil is concerned and where the Indian workmen were concerned, we had a huge amount of remittances which made good our current account deficit. The huge amount of remittances we got from Indians working in the Middle East. Now there is that fear, and there is that apprehension that people must come back to India. So from a remittance point of view, we are going to be impacted.
What about oil at $100 a barrel?
Well, oil, of course, oil is a huge issue. The 3 F's, fuel, food and finance. Fuel is right on top today. And we are going to have this huge challenge on oil, because oil then creates that imbalance in our economic planning.
And do the nuclear leaks and dangers that have occurred in Japan have impact in India? I see that you have a debate going on in India about whether India should continue its civilian nuclear program or not.
Well, yes, of course, it creates a sense of a panic amongst people, and nobody wants a nuclear plant in their vicinity. That's it. But we are not looking at nuclear plants at the coast which could be hit by a tsunami. So safety concerns will have to now be re-looked at so that people are more reassured, and even government is more cautious.
And the recent corruption scandals in the telecom mobile phone licenses seem to have made a lot of people internationally uneasy, thinking that perhaps India was sliding backwards and wasn't cracking down on corruption enough. What's your view?
Well, I think one bad story really doesn't mean that it can be generalized for India. Every country will have 1 or 2 bad stories, and that cannot then become the index of measurement of a country's ability to combat corruption.